Hi, Adrienne at Happy Hour Projects here, and not too long ago I shared a step-by-step photo tutorial for how to arm knit a blanket in an hour, and I got a lot of great feedback. And one of the comments that kept popping up was that there were a lot of readers who said that they would appreciate seeing a video of the technique. So that's what I'm going to show you today. Today's project is going to be actually an arm knit infinity scarf, but it does show you what the technique is, and all you need are your two arms and your yarn. Alright, and we're just going to jump right in. One of the reasons that we're only using one skein of yarn today, I just want to show you a little bit of detail here. When you use the yarn that's considered more of a scarf yarn, this has already got multiple strands built in, so you'll be able to get that bulk that using multiple skeins would give you, only you don't have to have all of the weight and all of the warmth, which makes this a nice spring weight. Alright, so let's just get started here. You want to take your yarn and you want to stretch out a good long, basically an arm span. So that's going to be about 4 or 5 feet, usually 5 feet, depends on how tall you are, how long your arms are. But at this 4 or 5 foot point, you just want to double up your yarn, and we're going to make an overhand knot. And this loop needs to be big enough to slide onto your wrist. Now you don't want it too tight or too loose. All you want is for it to be just big enough that you can slide it on over your hand and off. You don't want it much looser than that though, because you want your stitches to stay nice and uniform, nice and tight. Get my yarn straightened out here. Pardon me, I don't usually have an audience for this. Alright, now what I've got is this strand of yarn. This is my working yarn. This is what's attached to the skein. And this is the tail end that I just measured off. So what you're going to do is take these in your hand so that we can cast our stitches on. We're going to do 8 stitches. And casting on is honestly, it's the hardest part. Once you get past casting on, everything else is going to be easy, don't worry. So I'm going to go slow and I'm going to explain it. If you need to stop, back up, anything like that, feel free. Now if you get the hang of it right away and you need to fast forward, that's fine too. I just want to make sure I'm going slowly enough that if you're having trouble understanding what I'm talking about, that you can actually see it well. So here's what I found to be the most helpful is I grab it, both strands together in my hand. I hold them with these 2 fingers down here, and I spread it out over my thumb and my forefinger. This is the way that makes the most sense to me. You may find another positioning of your hands that makes better sense for you, but it kind of looks like a heart, so I always thought about it that way. So I've got my little heart. What we're going to do is take the innermost part of this strand here. This is your tail end, and we're going to pass it over the other side of the working yarn. What we're doing is we're actually creating a loop here. Can you see that? And we're going to pull through the loop and pick out the working yarn. This is creating a new stitch here, and we're putting that onto our hand. Now at the same time that we're doing that, with the left hand here, we're going to reach out, we're going to pull the rest of this thread snug to make our stitch. When I first got started, I was having a lot of trouble with this. Even though I was understanding how to make my stitch, to pull this inner part of the thread over and make the loop, what I was having trouble with is I would get it on and this part would be all loose and I thought I was doing it wrong. Both of your hands need to work at the same time. So you've got the right hand adding the stitches, and you've got the left hand actually working to snug those up at the bottom. You need to do both steps in order to have a successful cast on, okay? So we're going to try this again. If you're still working at it, don't worry about it. Just back up and do however many you need to. We're going to do 8 of them here, so I'm going to show probably all 8 of them pretty slow, just so you get a chance to see them. Pull it from the inside, pass it over the other side, and pull that stitch out. Meanwhile, we're going to snug it up with that left hand. Take the inside from your thumb, pass it over the one on your finger, pull that stitch out, and snug it up. We're going to pick it from the inside, pass it over, and pull that stitch out, tightening up at the bottom. A couple more to go here. You've got 7 stitches on, and we're going to do 8. If your yarn's a little bit shorter, if you've only got 30 yards, I've got 35 yards. If you've only got 30 yards, you may just want to do 6 or 7 stitches to make sure that you've got enough length, because for the infinity scarf, the length is honestly the most important. It's a lot more important than the width. I've done this one with 35 yards a couple times. I know I can handle 8 stitches. I know that it'll last far enough. So last stitch here, I've got my little heart. I'm going to pull from the inside, pass it over the one on my finger, pull that stitch out, slide it onto my hand, and secure it at the bottom. Now you've got your first row of stitches here on your right hand. And as I'm working right and left, if you want to go left to right, you're welcome to do that. This is just the way I always happen to do it, so that's the way that makes sense to me. Now that you've got your first row on, this tail end, we can just kind of set it aside. We'll be using it at the end to weave our ends together, but now we're just going to be working with this working yarn. So to make our next row, we're actually going to start knitting here. You hold your working yarn right in your right hand here, and you're going to pass the stitch over your hand. Pass the stitch over your hand, pull up a new stitch. This is your new row, and you put it onto your left hand here. Now I'm grabbing my working yarn just to make sure it's snug. So same thing, I've got my working yarn in my right hand, passing this stitch over, dropping it, creating a new stitch, and putting that on the left. Got the working yarn in my right hand, passing the next stitch over, creating a new stitch, and putting it on the left. So we're just going to keep doing this. This is why we didn't want to get it too tight, because you need to make sure that these stitches can still fit over your hand. It's got a little mixed up out of order. That's why I grabbed it wrong. And now you have 2 rows. The first row is all knitted off, and you've got your next row right here. And we're going to continue on in just the same way. So put your working yarn now in your left hand, pass that stitch off, and put it onto your right hand. You want to keep pulling this snug, make sure we've got only enough room so that it's going to be able to pass over the wrist. That's all the bigger it needs to be. You want to try to keep these as uniform as you can. All right, now I have knitted about 18 rows, and it's less by the number of rows, and honestly, to me, it's more the length that you get. I just measure it around my neck actually, and just make sure that it's going to be long enough. I liked it to go about hip to hip on against my body. When I've got enough length for that, so if you've got enough length, I'm going to show you how you're going to cast off now. And we're going to begin that in just the same way that you would do a regular row. What you're going to do is hold your working yarn in your, in this case it's going to be in my right hand. It can be whichever hand you happen to be ending on, but we're going to take the next stitch, pass it on. Sorry, it's actually more difficult for me to work slowly now that I've gotten the hang of it. We're going to take a second stitch and pass that on, and then at this point take the stitch that's closest to your body, that very first stitch. We're going to cast it off and just drop it. So now you just have 1 stitch over here on your left arm. So I'm going to show you that again. Working yarn in the right hand, pass this stitch over, create your new stitch. You've got 2 of them in your hand now. I do like to hold my working yarn just to keep it tight, make sure I don't drop it. But take this one closest to your body, pass it over the new one, and just drop it. That binds it off. Now, I'm not sure if binding off is actually a knitting term. I'm pretty sure that's a quilting term, but it does. It casts off and it closes off your scarf. It makes an end. So same thing, just take it off, drop that stitch, begin a new stitch, and drop it. And 1 more here. I'm always running short of yarn here at the end. Always makes me worry a little. Make sure I got just enough. It's gonna be close, folks. All right, now when we're left with just 1, look at how much yarn I have to spare here. When we're down to just 1, take this end of your yarn You want to pass it up through and make just a tiny little loop. You want to make this tight, tighten it up. You just want a tiny little loop here. And then we are just going to tie this off. You just want to make sure that this end doesn't go anywhere. So there we go. And now we have a finished end of a scarf. Now, if you didn't want this to be an infinity scarf, if you would prefer that it's a regular scarf, you can actually just quit here. But what we're gonna do, if we're gonna make the infinity scarf, you wanna spread your scarf out. Make sure it's all even, make sure it's not twisted or tangled. And you wanna double up these ends. You wanna line up your two ends. All right, you're gonna have to pardon me for needing a second take here, but I apparently pulled my whole work off camera. I was so focused on what I was doing. So I wanna make sure that you can actually see what I'm doing when I'm doubling up the scarf here, because we're gonna turn this into an infinity scarf so that it's an actual circle. Take both ends, just lay them across each other. Now this is our tail end that I told you we would be using to weave these ends together at the end. Well, that's exactly what we're gonna do. So you just take your little tail and pass it through, and make sure that you're getting both ends of your scarf here. You want to make sure that they're both coming together. Make sure you don't miss them as you go, because that kind of defeats the purpose. But you just want to kind of stitch these together. Make sure you got them both here. And you don't want this to be too tight. You want it to just be a nice even stitching, because if it pulls too tight, it's going to cinch the whole thing together. So we just want to follow the natural lay of your knit and just make sure we're getting both ends of the scarf in. Did I get them both there? Yep, okay. All right, now when we get to the end, you can just take these two tail ends and tie them together. That's what I do. Now, I'm sure there are yarnies out there that would probably gasp at what I'm doing and say, that's not right at all, but you know what? It served me fine. Never had any issues with it. And these two ends are already so close to each other anyway. Okay, yeah, I'm sure you don't need this many knots, but I just tend to be a little on the paranoid side. And you can take your scissors and just snip that end off. So now you have your nice finished infinity scarf. Now with this kind of yarn, it makes a really nice spring accessory, or if you're in the very northern part of the world, it makes sometimes a nice summer accessory too, just depending on where you are. You know, around here, I'm in Michigan, so we really go by color more so than the fact that it's a scarf. I'm sure you don't wear scarves down in Florida right now that it's spring. But I really like arm knitting because it's an instant gratification kind of project. If I can make something like this in 20 minutes, that's something I can do on my lunch hour while the kids are napping, and it's a lot of fun. It's a nice way to transition into the yarn projects because I don't knit and I don't crochet. So it's just a way to get started without investing a huge amount of time. All right, I'll see you next time.